MSI are getting into the 14-inch gaming laptop space with their new Stealth 14. But how does it compare against ASUS's Zephyrus G14 and Razer's Blade 14? Let's find out in this review. The Stealth 14 is available in two finishes, pure white or star blue. I've got pure white here, which is white on the lid and sides, but black on the interior. The magnesium aluminum alloy chassis feels nice. There's hardly any flex, even when pushing down hard on the keyboard. The lid is fairly sturdy too, but trying to flex it shows that the rubber feet underneath aren't very grippy. It's fairly easy to slide on my desk. The lid sticks out a little, making opening anywhere easy, and the screen goes the full 180 degrees back for sharing. The hinge feels solid even when ripping the lid open fast. The back has some subtle RGB lighting towards the corners, and the word Stealth in the middle. Overall, the Stealth 14 has a clean, professional looking design, with a small and portable footprint that puts it slightly thinner than the G14, but not quite as thin as the Blade 14. The laptop alone weighs 3.8 pounds or 1.7 kilos, increasing to 5.4 pounds or 2.45 kilos with the 240 watt charger included. Lighter than Razer's Blade 14 and similar to ASUS's Zephyrus G14. My Stealth 14 has Intel's Core i7-13700H processor, NVIDIA RTX 4070 graphics, 32 gigs of RAM and a 14-inch 240Hz screen. But you can get it with different specs for less money with the link below. The keyboard has perky RGB backlighting. All keys and secondary functions get lit, but compared to the Blade 14, the lighting is a little patchy and not as bright. There are 4 levels of key brightness, which can be adjusted by holding function and pressing the F8 key, but there's no shortcut to change the effect. You can customize the keyboard lighting through the included SteelSeries software, but this doesn't give you any customization over the rear lighting on the back. As far as I can tell, you can't change that. You only get the option to turn it on and off through the MSI Center software. Typing on the keyboard was fine. The only thing I didn't like was the tiny arrow keys. The touchpad works fine too, but the click feels nicer on the G14 and Blade 14. There are front-facing speakers down the front to the left and right of the touchpad, as well as underneath on the left and right sides. They actually sound quite good considering the smaller 14-inch size. I liked them more than the ASUS Zephyrus G14 and Razer Blade 14. They're still clear at higher volume with some bass. The only problem is the weird placement of the front speakers. They're just super easy to cover with your hands when using the laptop, which completely changes the sound for the worse. The Latencymon results were terrible. This is one of the worst results seen all year. As for ports, the left side has the power input, HDMI 2.1 output, and USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type-C port, while the right has a 3.5mm audio combo jack, a USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type-A port, and a Thunderbolt 4 Type-C port. That's it. There aren't any ports on the back, just that stealth RGB lighting. An extra Type-A port would have been nice. Only the Type-C port on the left can be used to charge the laptop with up to 100 watts. But both the left and right Type-C ports have DisplayPort support, so you can connect a screen to either. The left Type-C port always connects directly to the NVIDIA graphics, whether Optimus is on or off, while the right Type-C port connects to the Intel integrated graphics when Optimus is enabled, and when Optimus is off, it has no display output at all. HDMI always connected directly to the NVIDIA graphics, and we confirmed it could run our LG B9 TV at 4K 120Hz 12-bit with G-Sync. There are 8 Phillips head screws to remove to get inside. The 2 in the middle are longer than the rest, so keep track when removing. It was easy enough to open with pry tools starting around the back. I'll leave a link to the ones I use below. Inside, we've got the battery down the front, 2 memory slots just above in the middle, kind of a big deal in a 14-inch laptop, a single M.2 storage slot to the right, and Wi-Fi 6E card to the left of the memory. The Wi-Fi speed was decent, basically matching this year's Blade 14 and last year's G14. though this year's G14 was ahead, and so was last year's Alienware X14. The installed 2TB PCIe Gen 4 SSD was performing very nicely for both reads and writes. I confirmed a double-sided 4TB drive can fit in if you want to upgrade, but you might need to move the included pad. As there's only one M.2 slot, an upgrade will either need you to clone your existing Windows install or a fresh install. The upgradability score is the best from any 14-inch gaming laptop so far. This is the second time I've seen two upgradable memory slots, with the first being this year's Razer Blade 14, though I took half a point from that for it using uncommon screws, making access harder than it needs to be. The Stealth 14 is powered by a 72 watt-hour battery. Display power saver is enabled by default, which automatically lowers the screen's refresh rate to 60Hz when you unplug the charger to save power. This is why the screen flashes black, and it automatically goes back to 240Hz when you plug back in. It lasted for 5 hours and 18 minutes in my usual YouTube video playback test. Not a great result when the cheaper Gigabyte G5 with smaller battery lasted for almost the same amount of time. The 14-inch competition from ASUS and Razer were able to last much longer as they're using AMD processors rather than Intel, as these typically last longer in this workload. There was less difference in the game test. The Stealth dipped to 11 FPS and was unusable with 8% charge remaining. The Stealth 14 also has this message from our sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes to help you take the next step in your creative journey. Whether you're interested in photography, graphic design, music production, cooking, and way more, Skillshare has you covered. With the world rapidly embracing AI, Skillshare's latest classes are here to enhance your creative potential. Discover how to integrate the latest tech into your workflow, transforming the way you work. I recently completed the class ChatGPT for Creatives by Peggy Dean, which has helped me get the most out of these new AI tools by creating better prompts. Now I've been using ChatGPT to help me come up with better ideas for video titles and to better reword confusing concepts more simply. It's a powerful tool that the classes on Skillshare have helped me to master. Whether you want to learn the basics or how you can improve your career or business, Skillshare has classes to take you from a beginner to a pro alongside a supportive community. The first 1,000 people to use the link below will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So what are you waiting for? Redefine your work and achieve your goals by joining Skillshare today. Back to the Stealth. Let's check out thermals next. It's got 2 fans and a vapor chamber cooler covering both the CPU and GPU. MSI told me they're using phase change thermal pads on both the CPU and GPU. There are air intake vents directly above the fans, and air gets exhausted out of the back towards the corners and from the rear vents on the left and right sides. MSI's control center software allows us to change between different performance modes, which from lowest to highest are silent, balanced, and extreme performance. Extreme mode gives us the option to overclock the GPU, but there isn't one applied by default, and we didn't change that. We can also enable cooler boost, which sets the fans to full speed, or customize the fans a bit in advanced mode. You can also max the fans out instantly at any time by holding function and pressing the up arrow key. This does not require software, so it works regardless of mode, or even in Linux. The internal temperatures were fine at idle. The rest of the results are from combined CPU and GPU stress tests, which aim to represent a worst-case full-load scenario. The rest of the temps weren't bad at all. There wasn't thermal throttling happening in any of the modes. The CPU was warmest in silent and balanced mode. Extreme mode was cooler, and setting the fans to full speed could lower the temps by 4 to 5 degrees Celsius. But of course, it gets louder too. Running with the lid closed was basically the same as lid open, so no problems docking it. The cooling pad I test with, linked below the video, wasn't quite as good as just running the fans maxed out. But as you'll hear soon, the cooling pad actually makes it quieter. These are the clock speeds during the same tests. The CPU clock speeds were highest in silent and balanced modes, but the GPU speed is much lower compared to extreme mode, so that's the trade-off. Otherwise, there weren't any real differences in extreme mode because thermals were not a limit. We can see that the CPU was locked in at about 24 watts in extreme mode, while the RTX 4070 was running at 90 watts. That might not sound like much, but due to Nvidia's voltage limit, the 4070 doesn't really end up running much higher than this in bigger laptops anyway, so this isn't really a problem. Other laptops advertised as having 140 watt 4070s are just kind of misleading. Although CPU performance was higher in silent and balanced modes, most games are going to rely more on the GPU, which is why extreme mode offers much higher FPS in Cyberpunk. This is especially true at the native 2560 by 1600 resolution of the screen that we've got here. The CPU power level can run much higher when the GPU isn't active, like in Cinebench, where 90 to 100 watts was possible on the i7-13700H processor. It's a decent result compared to others, and faster compared to Lenovo's bigger Lock 16 with the same processor. The multi-core performance is basically the same as the 8-core Ryzen processor in this year's ASUS Zephyrus G14 and Razer's Blade 14, though the single-core score was 5% ahead with the Stealth. This makes the Stealth the best 14-inch laptop result recorded so far, at least with the charger connected, because performance lowers if we unplug the charger and instead run purely off of battery power. The drop is significant in terms of multi-core score, but the single-core performance doesn't change too much. Razer's Blade 14 is much worse in terms of single-core performance, while the ASUS Zephyrus G14 is better than both of them. Most laptops I test are in the low 30°C range on the keyboard at idle. The Stealth was a little warmer than this, but it's not a bad result. It's much warmer with the stress tests going. The WASD area was uncomfortable, while the middle felt hot because the fans are much quieter in this mode. Balanced mode wasn't too different, despite the louder fans. The WASD area just felt warmer than I'd like, while the middle was hot. Extreme mode was a little cooler, but it's still quite warm. You could definitely keep your hand on WASD without any problems though. It's a bit cooler with the fans maxed out, but it's much louder now too. Let's have a listen. The fans were silent most of the time when sitting there idle, but they would randomly turn on every so often, which is why I included 2 idle results. The fans get louder in the higher modes when under load, as expected, but maxing the fans out was quite loud at 58 decibels. If you recall from our temperature results earlier, using a cooling pad gave very similar results, except it lowered total fan noise to about 52 decibels, which was much more usable. MSI have gone with a 14-inch 16x10 screen, which means that there are more pixels vertically compared to a standard 16x9 panel. I've got the 2560 by 1600 screen resolution here, but it's also available with a lower 1920 by 1200 resolution option as well. So expect different results with that compared to what I'm about to show. The screen looks good. Color gamut is fairly high and should be alright for some content creation work in addition to gaming. It gets fairly bright too. We measured it at 449 nits when set to 100% brightness, and it lowers at an even rate. There was some backlight bleed, but I never actually noticed this during normal use, and it will vary between laptops anyway. Average gray-to-gray response time was great at 3.8 milliseconds, and most transitions were below the 4.17 milliseconds needed to occur within the 240Hz refresh window. A good result. There was some overshoot and undershoot detected, but we can't do anything about it. There's an overdrive setting in the control center software. Normally, turning this off would raise the screen's response time, but remove overshoot and undershoot, but it didn't work. It's a good result compared to other laptops, and in line with other larger 2560 by 1600 240Hz panels tested. This includes Razer's Blade 14, and it's only a little quicker compared to this year's ASUS Zephyrus G14. The total system latency is the amount of time between a mouse click and when a gunshot fire appears on the screen in CSGO. Again, it's much the same as Razer's Blade 14, and both have a slight edge compared to the G14. There's a 720p camera above the screen with a privacy shutter, and it has IR for Windows Hello Face Unlock. Here's how the camera and microphones look and sound, and this is what it sounds like while typing on the keyboard. Like every other MSI laptop this year, there's no advanced Optimus. There is at least a muck switch, so you can disable Optimus for a speed boost in games, but you have to reboot to apply the change. It's not a huge problem, just not as convenient compared to the ASUS Zephyrus G14, which does have advanced Optimus. Now let's find out how well MSI's Stealth 14 actually performs in games. We've tested it with these settings for best results. Cyberpunk 2077 was tested the same on all laptops, and the Stealth 14 is shown by the red highlight. It's one of the lower results we've got for an RTX 4070 laptop so far, though quite similar to HP's larger Omen Transcend 16. It's not too different to other 4070 laptops at the higher 1440p resolution though. The Stealth is very close to Razer's Blade 14, which is a more expensive option. Red Dead Redemption 2 was tested with the game's benchmark, and the Stealth was again one of the lower RTX 4070 results recorded. Razer's Blade 14 with same GPU was 11% faster now, despite being a similar size. The Blade is 5% faster at the higher 1440p resolution, and again the Stealth is closer to the rest of the 4070 laptops tested now. To be fair, it is ahead of the 3080 Ti in last year's Blade 14, which is still a much more expensive laptop. The Stealth was again the lowest result at 1080p in control, and only slightly better than the best RTX 4060 results in average FPS. A number of those actually had less dips in performance, as shown by the higher 1% lows. The Blade 14 really shows what can be done in the 14-inch space, when you've got money. And again, at 1440p, the average FPS gap is much smaller, though the Blade had much better 1% low results compared to the Stealth. Here are the 3D Mark results for those that find them useful. Now for some content creator tests. Adobe Photoshop was tested with the Puget Systems benchmark tool. Razer's more expensive Blade 14 was a little behind now, but not by much. This test lacks single-core performance, so it's no surprise to see i9 laptops ahead, but the Stealth was able to beat a number of larger i7 laptops. The Adobe Premiere test recently changed, so we're still building up our data. It's close to a number of other 4070 laptops, but could be beaten by some 4060 laptops. GPU power matters more in DaVinci Resolve, and again, like the games, it's the lowest RTX 4070 result recorded so far. Even the 4060 in the Zephyrus G14 was better. There's not much of a difference between the 4060 and 4070 results in Blender, and although the Stealth is one of the lower results from a 4070, the differences here are smaller than what we saw in the games. We've also tested SpecView Perf, which tests out various professional 3D workloads. MSI's Advanced BIOS provides you with almost unlimited customization once you enter the usual cheat code to access it. You can change things from power limits, temperature limits, memory timings, and more. This is way more option compared to any other laptop brand. Linux support was tested with an Ubuntu 23.04 live CD. By default, the keyboard, touchpad, camera, and speakers worked, but the Wi-Fi did not. Keyboard shortcuts to adjust screen brightness, keyboard brightness, volume, and max out the fans all worked though. Pricing and availability will change over time, so check the links below for updates and current sales. And if the Stealth 14 does have a good sale, we'll be sure to add it to our gaminglaptop.deals website. We update that every day to include all of the latest sales. So make sure you check it out regularly to save money on your next gaming laptop. Pricing is a little weird at the time of recording, because the RTX 4050 configuration is $1,500 US. Kind of a ripoff, because the 4060 is $1,300 on sale with double the SSD storage space. Even without the sale, the previous price is listed the same as the 4050 config, so there's no point buying the 4050 unless that drops a lot. Unfortunately, the 4070 model that I've tested here doesn't appear to be listed right now, so I'm not sure how much more it is. Just for brief comparison, Razer's Blade 14 with RTX 4060 is $1,000 more than the Stealth, while the G14 is a little more too, at least without any current sales. But again, check the deal site below, as there are currently sales on other configurations of the G14, but it changes every day. I think it makes sense that the G14 is a little more expensive than MSI's Stealth 14, as I think the G14 is a little bit better of a laptop. The build quality of the G14 just feels a bit more premium. The G14's battery life lasts much longer due to the Ryzen processor. Performance while running on battery power is also better with the G14, and the G14 just has nice features like Advanced Optimus. But then on the other hand, MSI's Stealth 14 has better CPU performance when connected with the charger. It has better speakers, as long as your hands aren't covering them. And the Stealth also has more RAM upgradability, as the G14 has some memory soldered to the motherboard. So compared to the 14-inch competition, I think the Stealth 14 definitely has a place as a cheaper option. But the RTX 4070 in my Stealth 14 wasn't really that much better compared to an RTX 4060. So check this video next to find out if it's worth spending more money on a 4070 laptop, or if you can save some cash getting the 4060 instead. I'll see you in that one next.